Hello, everyone. I'm Irma Baker. Welcome to our show. It's so great to have you with us and so great to have our guest today, Ken Holsworth. You may have run into Ken if you've gone to community band performances or other musical events in the Wadsworth area because he is a trumpet player and he has had a wonderful experience as a trumpet player with the Army Band. So Ken, it's wonderful to have you with us. Thank you for being with us today.
Hi, Irma.
Doing fine here, and so glad you could be with us. And I am just fascinated when I heard about you. Our crew members, Sharon and Dave Moritz, recommended you. I believe Dave has met you at the Y, so many places that people may have run into you in our Wadsworth community. But it's just fascinating to know that your experience in the Army was with the band. Now, first of all, how did you get involved in music?
Well, pretty much like everybody else, elementary school, most people, a lot of kids were asked to play an instrument or sing in the choir, and my father decided I was going to play trumpet. So in 5th grade, I started playing the trumpet. That's how everything started.
So it was your father who said, okay, out of all the instruments that are out there, you, Ken, are going to play the trumpet.
That's about right. Yeah.
Did he have any special reason for wanting you to play the trumpet?
I guess these days, thinking back, I would say that was probably because he played trumpet in the high school band and probably had a great time and met his future bride in the band, and probably he wanted me to do it so that I would also enjoy it. And he pushed pretty hard, so I think he wanted me to be better than he was when he was playing. So those are my guesses.
Well, there are some advantages to trumpet. It's not like hauling around drums or a tuba or some of the other big instruments. Trumpet's much more portable.
That's true.
So then you started in elementary school, and then did you go, were you in bands then in elementary school, high school, college?
We had a band in elementary, like here in Wadsworth and most public schools and private institutions, and then of course continued on through middle school, or we called it junior high back then, 7th and 8th grade, remember that? And played through high school when I continued to get better, and I met a majority of my friends. I really enjoyed it. If you talk to most kids these days, marching band is a lot of fun, and which it was, and I still have memories from that. And so I continued to improve as a player. And when I came graduation time in high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do at that point, and figured I'm going to cut my losses and do what I do the best. And so that's how that all sort of started.
So really music became more than just an extracurricular activity. It was really part of your life.
Well, after that, I went ahead and attended the College of Worcester for a couple of years. That's where I grew up, and was in Worcester, Ohio. And I got a full scholarship to college at the College of Worcester. And you got to remember at the time that college cost probably less than $5,000 I think it was a year. And so, I got to go there basically for free. And that's where I got a lot of my music education in higher education. So that's where the ball started to kind of roll after that.
Well, Worcester has quite a reputation for musical. I know that I believe they have like a light opera program.
That's right. That's sort of the summertime, right? Mm-hmm.
Very much music and College of Worcester seem to go together. So it was a great place for you to be, to really expand and develop your trumpet playing. So how did you come to be in an Army band?
Well, that's a long road, and there's sort of a few bumps along the way. Sort of make the story a little shorter. I ended up quitting college at Worcester, and I ended up going out to Arizona and playing in the symphony there. I'd won a position with the Phoenix Symphony Orchestra, and realized that that really wasn't, my direction was not focused, and I really didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. And I found out that there was military bands. This is back in the mid-70s, right after Vietnam. And I found out that there were military bands, which I really didn't know much about. And I found out at that time, you called them up on the phone and you said, I'm interested in auditioning. Are there any openings? Now, the opening I was auditioning for was in Washington, D.C. So that was a very specific job. It wasn't just joining the Army to be a musician. It was actually you auditioned for a specific position in Washington, D.C. So I was very excited about that because I was waiting to get out of Phoenix, and I thought this would be a great opportunity to extend my musical career. And, I didn't know much about the military, but I thought, wow, that'd be a great job. So I auditioned first I made a reel-to-reel tape. Remember reel-to-reel recorders? And I made a reel-to-reel tape, sent it there by snail mail, which wasn't a word back then. And received a letter asking me to come out and audition in person, which I did, and with probably 25 other individuals. And I was young and pretty naive and full of myself, and I just played. There were several rounds of audition, and I won the position. And that's how the band started. Now, just to clarify, in the position I auditioned for was very specific. It was for the Army band in Washington, D.C. A lot of people think, oh, you're in the Army band, so-and-so, but they're stationed in, Washington State or California or someplace like that, a different location. I wouldn't know them. It's a very specific job in Washington. And I want to call my comparative bands would be the Marine Band, which would be the President's own band, and the Navy Band, Air Force Band, and then the Army Band, which actually has a title, Pershing Zone Band. So those four bands in Washington, D.C. were co-workers. We performed a lot of that. Well, I'll get into that later if you want to ask. We did a lot of the ceremonies around Washington, D.C.
I really do want to get into that. And what you're talking about, though, is a different aspect of the military than I've ever been familiar with. The fact that you didn't enlist with the Army, but applied for a particular position in the Army.
It's as if I were to take an orchestra audition somewhere. You have a specific position you're going to, and you try out or audition for that position. And if you're accepted, then the only difference is in the Army, then you do have to join the Army. So I did have to go to basic training. And after basic training, then I didn't have to go to any other training. I went, straight to Washington, D.C., and they put a uniform on me, and away we went. So that's how that sort of started.
Well, that's really interesting, because there you are, a musician, and you went through basic training just like any Army enlistee would.
That's right. Yeah.
All the things that we see on shows and that about how rigorous it is, that must have been kind of out of your play space.
Actually, no. Basic training was, physically demanding and mentally and emotionally kind of stressful, but that's what basic's for. And I remember it like it was yesterday. And I knew that I was going to the Army band. So after basic was over, I knew that I had a job waiting for me that was very specific, as opposed to maybe some other members that went to Army members that went to basic. They're not sure where they may go. They may, there's hundreds of positions they could do in the Army, and I knew where I was going. So that helped a little bit. So.
Yeah, when we think of someone enlisting in the Army, I think we automatically assume it's going into combat or into preparation for something like that. But the Army and all the military branches are really very widespread in terms of the jobs that the people who are there do.
I remember I've had a lot of people ask me, what did you do in the Army? And I say I was in the Army band in Washington, D.C. And they'll go, okay, and then what else did you do? They understand that was my job. And of course, that's a big part of military service is ceremonial. It's very steeped in history and ceremonial work. So that was a very big part of it. And that's what I was part of.
And there's a lot of rigorous training for that too. Anybody who has seen any of the military band performances just knows how very, I'm not even sure the word to use, but we see just how, I guess, precision. They are definitely precision bands.
Yeah, you had to keep your wits about you. If you were out marching somewhere, you got to make sure that you got to understand that somebody's watching you at some point at all the time. I mean, I remember I've seen a couple photos of parts of the group and myself, and you don't even know that person's taking a picture of you or even filming you. You might not even know. So one of the things that's stressed is definitely being, very picky about how you look and how you act.
Because you never know when you're on camera.
Never know.
Well, tell us about some of your experiences. I know we have some pictures that you've sent to us so that we can get a little idea of this. But one thing, and I don't think we have any pictures of this, but you actually played for 5 presidents?
I got in 1978. And I remember playing one of my early jobs, performances was at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, and Jimmy Carter was laying a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And I was part of the Army band that played for that service. So go back to Jimmy Carter and add him up till 1998. So all the ones in between there. So it's about 4 to 5 presidents. And I've also met Gerald Ford also. So we performed for him. He wasn't president at the time, but also got to do a ceremony for his unveiling of his museum in Michigan.
I've been there. Very nice museum. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah.
Yes. Well, we have a picture of you playing at the laying of the wreath at the Unknown Soldier, Tomb of the Unknown Soldier.
Correct.
What was that like?
Very nerve-wracking. The ceremony basically is this. The Tomb of the Unknown Soldier is a monument to the big one in the middle is from World War I. And then there's 2 other ones from Korea and World War II, unknown soldiers. And so it is in honor of our military, people anywhere from a president or a foreign dignitary to a Boy Scout group, to a Girl Scout group, or a school will come in and lay a wreath in honor of the military dead, through the services. So they have a tomb guard that walks 21 steps in front of the tomb 24 hours a day there at Arlington. When a wreath is laid at the ceremony, they always perform a wreath laying ceremony, and that includes the wreath, people laying it from the organization, and also taps. So the Army, since the Army supplies the tomb guards there, the Army band supports, that's the tomb ceremonies. I call it Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. We refer to it as the tomb. And so you would get, your day would be today. My day would be today, and I would go down and perform all the ceremonies down at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. I could play taps 2 times. I could play taps 21 times or 20 times, depending on how many wreaths are laid that day and who's laying them. So it's very busy in the spring and the summer. It's a nerve-wracking job from the viewpoint that you are the center of attention. It is, you could hear a pin drop there, and you're playing taps. And of course, you don't want to screw it up. And so it is a very high tension job. You get used to it. And like I said before, people are snapping pictures all over the place. So you have to sort of ignore that. And you realize you have a job to do. And it's important to you to do a good job. And that's basically it.
It sounds a little bit like those guards in front of Buckingham Palace.
It is a lot like that. Yeah.
Well, you've had some experience in your Army career with bands from foreign countries. I think you were you with a British band? The Army band played with a British band too?
The Army band, I don't know how many years they did it before I was in the band, but when I was there for my 20 odd years, we would do what they call military tattoos. A lot of people don't know about those because it's more international and they're very popular in Europe and other countries. And a military tattoo is basically, it's just like a tattoo you get on your arm, but it's spelled a little differently. And what it means is that it's a military how do I say that, extravaganza at a particular location. It could be Nova Scotia, Canada, where we would go sometimes. It could be Australia, it could be England, wherever they're having these big military shows, and it could be military bands from around the world. So we will meet people from Japan, bands from Japan, or when you mentioned England, I played a couple ceremonies. We played with the Royal Marine Band, the Queen's Band from England, and I sent a picture to you, and one of them is of our band playing with the Royal Marine Band, and they have the pith helmets. And I think that's kind of interesting now because of Prince Philip's funeral. I don't know if anybody, several people I'm sure watched that, and they had the bugle calls. And one of those groups wore the pith helmets, and those are the guys that we played with, and ladies that we played with through the years. So it has been kind of interesting.
Certainly a broad range of opportunities with your own band and with other bands. You also sent a picture about an arrival ceremony. What are arrival ceremonies?
When a dignitary, president, or the Pope, or somebody like that comes visiting our country, they'll usually fly into what at the time it was called Andrews Air Force Base. I think they've renamed the Air Force Base, which is right outside of Washington, D.C. And they would bring in their country's airplane, and I think in the photo I sent was from the Arab states. But we did a lot of them. So the person would arrive, and there would be a ceremony at the airport and also at the White House when they would go visit the president. So the ceremonies would follow these dignitaries around wherever they would go in the Washington, D.C. area to show us that we're welcoming them to this country. And it's important, it's an important event. So an arrival ceremony would be just what I described. And then we would do the opposite when they left, and we call that a departure ceremony. So whenever they left the country and the White House, we would perform a ceremony. And this would involve not just the Army, but all the services that were representative. And so we would perform. Now, one thing I didn't mention is, and we kind of went over that, was I played in a thing called the Herald Trumpets. And the Herald Trumpets are the long trumpets with the flag on it. And I played in that group quite often. And that was sort of a ceremonial group that was most representative of all these ceremonies, the Herald Trumpets.
Well, I think some of us had heard of arrival ceremonies, but a departure ceremony, never had heard of that. But as you said, this is all part of diplomatic relations with foreign countries. So the bands are part of that, I guess, sense of respect and recognition of the other dignitaries and the other countries that are so important around the world. And maybe not even that they are the big countries, but that there are so many countries with whom we have diplomatic relations. Certainly the world has become a much smaller place than perhaps it was 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. Certainly in our lifetime, we've seen a lot of change in this whole globalizing of our world. And now, so you were in the band until 1998?
Correct.
And what have you done since then? You're still very much active in music.
Well, once I retired, there were many options for me to go to. I grew up in Ohio, so I wanted to come back here. And I ended up taking a job with a music store in Akron for just a little while, and decided that wasn't quite what I was thinking of, what I wanted to do. So I decided I'm done with that. And I had met all these people in the music industry because of that job. So I decided, well, I'm just going to sort of venture out on my own, and I get a retirement check, though it's not a lot. It helps, you know, it's sort of a little bit of a safety net. And I went out and started soliciting students to teach privately, which I had done in Washington, D.C. too. I also taught privately on, you know, outside the military functions. And so I started soliciting students. And so I got quite a few high school band directors looking for somebody to teach. And I also got involved in adjudicating music, judging music events, such as, you know, a high school group would go and play some music for a judge, and then they would rate them. And I got heavily involved with that. It could be anywhere from marching band to a solo played by one individual. And I also played, I continued to perform. I have not stopped performing at all. So I got to know some people in the area and made some phone calls, and found there were some opportunities to perform. So of those three things, can't think of much else. It keeps me pretty busy.
Well, it certainly sounds like it does. What do you enjoy most about music?
That's a tough question there, Irma, because I could probably go on and on. And when you say the most, it's pretty difficult. But I would probably say, if I've had other people ask me that too, you know, what, you know, but I've thought about, you know, I think it's just the people, meeting so many people and having the opportunity, music opening up an avenue to do that. You know, brings back memories of whenever we performed jobs at the Kennedy Center, performed at the Kennedy Center, if you know what the Kennedy Center is, the Performing Arts Center in Washington, D.C., or at the White House or the Capitol or wherever performed. There's always somebody of interest, and in a uniform, you can go up and talk to them. And I'd shake people's hands, or it could be just my coworkers, you know, meeting so many neat people as as coworkers, contemporaries. So it was, I think that's probably the neatest part, is just meeting so many neat people and not feeling like it's work. It's just for fun.
Well, they say if you're doing what you love, it's not really work.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of the people that you've met, and I'm not talking about the dignitaries. We've talked about the fact that you've met presidents and you've been there when heads of state have come to the country. But the whole idea of being with people who love the same things you love, I think that's a big part of music, isn't it?
You have a common bond, that's for sure. You know, that could go anywhere from, you know, a band director. You can talk on the same language with a band director, and I can also go to a professional musician who just performs for a living and also have a similar conversation. But you're right, that's exactly true. You do have a common bond, and it's interesting when I got in the band, and as I became more, you know, familiar with the group and calmed down a little bit, and that was my job, you start meeting people that come from different states than you come from, or different areas of the country, and you all have the same sort of stories. You know, my story is not unique. If you were to interview somebody else in the same situation from, like, let's say a buddy of mine in the Navy band or the Marine band, their story is going to be very similar to mine, and we're going to have the same sort of experiences. So you're exactly right. We are sharing much of and so it makes us closer together, the common bond, I think, our experiences.
Did you have
Playing,
the opportunity to meet the members of the other military bands?
oh yeah, we did a lot of inter-service playing. You would not only meet them at military functions if we had to do a service where more than one band participated. You also met them in the civilian life. Several of the musicians had a second job. You know, they would do something different, or they would maybe freelance as a musician in town. You would meet these other musicians at these freelance jobs. So you became friends with other people in the other bands. And again, that was, you know, you just step right in. They're doing the same things you are. And some of my good buddies are in the Marine band. I remember years ago, we made a Christmas CD at the Trinity Church at Catholic University, which is a big Catholic church, and Christmas music and brass players. And we were all in the military, but different services. So it was great.
It's a wonderful opportunity to have to meet so many people that share the same interests and likes that you do. What about people, now you've taught, you've been teaching music now for, well, quite a while, pretty much since you left the military. What would you say to people who want to get involved in music? You were very fortunate to have the support and really the encouragement, maybe almost the kick in the pants to get into it and do it, of having a dad who was involved in music. But what about people who maybe are hesitant about trying to get involved in music?
Well, that has definitely changed throughout the years. When I first started teaching, it was probably when I was in college, getting my undergraduate degree. And I did it on the side to earn some extra money. And things have changed throughout the years. You know, first of all, what we're doing right now has changed the music industry, you know, the computer and all the new technology, which didn't exist back then. So live music was much more important at the time. People had a little more time to do, you know, go and see live music or listen to live music. So as the years have progressed, things have changed. So if you were to ask me, you know, 20 to 30 years ago, my answer would have been different than what I'm going to give you right now. Because I think it's become more difficult, you know, to get involved in, you know, live music. The recording industry has sort of taken off. So I've recommended students to maybe get involved in recording. If you want to be a performer, it's a difficult road, and think about where you want to perform and what you want to perform. I've had lots of students call me. You nailed it right on the head there, that I've had people come up to me and ask me, you know, I want to be a professional musician like you. What should I do? And I'm like, oh boy, you know, this is a tough one, because it's not as easy as it used to be. And again, I want the student to fulfill their dream. I'm not going to discourage them, but I want to be honest with them and go into the situation eyes wide open. Does that sort of answer your question? Does that make sense?
I think it does. It does. Because if you're going to go into anything wholeheartedly, you have to expect that it's not going to be all fun and games. It's going to be work, but that work is going to bring you a lot of satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, we've come to the end of our time. It always goes so fast, I know.
It goes fast. I appreciate
It
that.
goes fast. So I want to thank you so much for being our guest today on RSVP. And we're going to close now with you playing taps.